I think we're just a little, but almost 5 minutes after, so we're going to go ahead and get started, and hopefully we will be joined by others. But it is so good to see all of you. Here we are on Zoom again. So hello, everyone. Happy 2022. I hope that each of you remain safe and well as we, as you all know, continue to navigate our friend and companion known as COVID. Hopefully you had a safe and happy holiday season and everyone is well. For those of you who don't know, I'm Terry Loftus. I'm the president and executive director of TACA, and welcome to our fourth and final workshop with our partner, TRG Arts, today on rethinking stewardship. Before we get into our session today, I'd like to briefly thank our generous sponsor for our resiliency series with TRG, and that is the Sapphire Foundation, with additional support from our friends over at Communities Foundation of Texas. So very grateful for their financial support and support in general in making this series a success. We're excited about it and we look forward to doing more of these in the future. I would also like to thank and welcome our guest speakers today, beginning with our friend Sandra Session Robertson, who is the Senior Director of Communications and Philanthropy for the Dallas Children's Theater, and former TACA co-worker employee David Leggett, who is now the current Director of Individual Giving for the National Sculpture Center. So welcome, Sandra and David. We look forward to your insight in today's session. And finally, our thanks to our partners and friends at TRG Arts, Caitlin Green and Jenny Cohen, for being with us through this series. It's been an awesome experience for us, and hopefully we have not stressed them out too much for all of the great work that they've done in making these workshops a success for us. And so now with that, to get us started, I will kick things over to TACA's Senior Programs Manager, Greg Ortel, who will get our session started today. So back over to you, Greg.
I am actually going to take the reins from Greg because Greg's fire alarm is going off in his building. So we decided to spare y'all that sound, and you might hear from Greg a little bit later in the session.
Actually, the ceiling fan behind Greg is going to flip and turn into a disco ball, and then he's going to start.
So welcome everyone, as Terry said, to our fourth and final session in the Comeback Collection with our friends at TRG. We have so enjoyed doing this four-part series with all of you and with Caitlin and Jenny. So glad to wrap things up today and on such amazing, relatable topic, stewardship, something we can all, that's relevant to all of us. My name is Maura Scheffler. I'm TACA's Director of Programs. And I'm so excited to have Sandra and David with us today as our kind of local stewardship gurus who will be popping in and out throughout the session. Thank you, as Terry said, to our two sponsors for the session. We could not do this work without them and their support. So before we get into things, we have a couple of notes just to get us level set and started. First, we are planning it right now, all of our workshops for the rest of 2022. So if you all have things that you want to hear from us in future sessions, please, please, please complete our feedback survey after today's session. That will give you an option not just to provide feedback about what we do together today, but also what you want to see in TACA's workshops as we move forward into 2022. This is going to be, I think, a really important year for us. So please, please, please share that feedback. Greg has dropped that link into the chat so you can have it open and not forget to fill it out. So thank you in advance. And then second, as attendees of this workshop, you have access to one-on-one consulting time with Caitlin, free, no strings attached. Just send her an email and say, some things that we talked about in today's session really hit a chord for me, and I want to unpack some things more deeply and get your advice. Can I have 30 minutes of your time? And she will say, yes. When would you like to do it? Before the end of February, which is our only caveat. So Greg also just dropped Caitlin's email in the chat. That's a benefit that we have of doing this series with them, is not only doing these sessions and this work together, but also creating those opportunities for you to do that on your own as you need to. And finally, we really love these opportunities, virtual or in person, for people here to get to know one another. So when you have an opportunity to talk, please introduce yourself, say your name and where you work. We always assume that we know, but that isn't always the case. So we're trying to create those opportunities to connect, even if we aren't together in person. So first, and before I turn it over to Caitlin, I just want to say thank you so much to both of them, for both Caitlin and Jenny, for everything that they've done. We're so grateful to have both of them here with their years of experience and passion and dedication to the arts. So thank you, take notes, sign up for your consulting time before the end of February, do our survey. Caitlin, I will turn the time over to you.
Thank you, Maura. Thanks, Maura, Greg, everyone at TACA, Terry. It's been such a pleasure to have these conversations with you all over the last 10 months, I don't know, over the last long time. And so it's great to see your faces here today. I'm going to get us started. So today we are talking about stewardship.
Caitlin, you muted.
Teaching moment.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Will. Jenny has help from Will today. Sorry about that, folks. Okay, so today we're talking about stewardship. And many of you all know the word. This isn't a new word. And in fact, most of this probably isn't a new concept. But what we're really talking about is redefining or repositioning stewardship in our organizations. Really says something that's a bit more front and center and not an afterthought. And the reason why we're doing this is because we work with organizations across the country, and it's often not at the top of the list. So this is a place where we see this incredible potential for you to build strong relationships. And that's what we want to talk about here today. So let's, and they've been introduced twice now. You have wonderful, lovely guests that we've had great conversations with ahead of time that will be participating. So please give your thanks to Sandra and David for coming into this and being both guinea pigs when we ask questions, but also bringing extraordinary expertise and perspective to today's conversation. Okay, let's start here. I've got a series of questions that I'm hoping you all will put your answers into chat. And maybe Maura, because it's hard for me to pull up chat for some reason at the same time that I see all of you, could you just read out some of the answers that we get as they come in? So my first question to everybody to drop into chat is, who are you? You personally, you as an organization, answer it however you like. Who are you intentionally, actively stewarding today? So I want to talk about the people. Who are you stewarding?
Volunteers.
Volunteers. It's a great segment for stewardship. Yeah.
The community.
That's a big one. That's a lot, right? How do we bring our communities along with us? Yeah.
Uptown Players is a local LGBTQ focused theater who are stewarding that particular community.
Yeah.
Patrons and donors, says another. Choral arts in the community, young professionals, says Hannah McHugh from Dallas Opera. Sandra said donors that are fairly new pre-COVID.
Great.
Arts groups and artists at Salmon Center for the Arts. Thanks, Hannah.
This is great. So you already have what you've all just answered shows a really broad and diverse perspective about who needs stewardship and who we can create really tailored and smart plans around to better serve in our organizations. Okay, I have another question. I'm trying to have another question. If you haven't watched Who's On First, this is probably my all-time favorite bit. So you can Google Who's On First later. Who's On First is an Abbott and Costello bit where it's basically saying, who's in charge here? I don't understand who's doing what. So who in your organization is responsible for stewardship? Just drop the department or title into chat for who carries the responsibility of stewardship.
I got a couple everyone's.
Excellent. Yes. Would anyone say it's only development? I hear that from clients sometimes. Development stewards, marketing sells, development stewards, artistic produces. Is that true in anyone's organization?
We got a community relations and development, a board, musicians and staff.
Yeah.
Communications and development. Yeah.
Communications and development. Great. So there's some diversity across that, but almost every organization has a development officer or team that is thinking actively about stewardship. This is a part of major giving. This is part of the plan from the get-go, is how do we start to steward these gifts? I'm happy to see that there are others listed in that as well, and that you're saying everybody is exactly where we're going today. So we're going to talk about how to really build that culture into your organization. All right, my last question. Are you budgeting for stewardship activities? Is there a line item in your budget that says stewardship? Is it part of your campaigns? Just yes or no.
Couple yeses, couple no's. More no's than yeses, I think, at this point.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so we've got a broad group of people who can steward, who need to be stewarded. We've got multiple departments who participate in stewardship in some cases. And then we're a little mixed as to whether or not there's a line item for this, that there really is a bucket of money here set aside for the sole purpose of stewarding your audiences. We're going to talk a little bit more about all this. Here's where we're going today. We're going to talk about the theory, our theory of stewardship here this morning. A lot of this is going to be familiar. It's not about making it new and weird. It's a reminder of the time that we're in and how desperately we need the work. So let's just talk about the theory. And then we're going to give you examples because we love examples. So let's see what other people do well. What does stewardship look like in practice? What can it look like in practice? And then the third piece of today is about putting some of this into action, where we will ask you all during this session to write down a quick campaign plan to be able to serve one of your segments with really good stewardship activities. So we're going to start with the theory. Okay, we steward because our work is about connection. I talk about this with my clients all the time, that we are human people connecting with other human people. We connect them to each other, to artists and ideas, experiences, cultures, perspectives, communities. We are in the business of connection. I fundamentally believe that. And the connection that we provide is a deeply human experience. That this is something unique to what we can do for people in our communities and unique to what people can experience. So since we're all humans here, we probably know some things about connection and relationships. And honestly, that's what all of this is about. This is about connection and building strong relationships. In fact, that's what the last 3 sessions have all been about, are about building stronger connections and relationships with the people that are closest to your organization and guarantee its success. So what these things require, it requires 2 things. If I was going to totally simplify it, I would say that successful relationships require attention and intention. We've got to have some time and space for this, to think about it, to have strategies around it, to implement. That's attention. Intention says we know what we're supposed to get out of this. We know what happens when we start to invest in this. We are doing this deliberately and thoughtfully with full engagement. So today, that's our definition of stewardship: attention and intention. And we're bringing that to all of the relationships that we manage. So we're talking about artists and audience, funders, neighbors, communities, colleagues, peers, board. This is internal, external. This is everybody. And we are, all of us, wholly and fully in the relationship business. So for a moment, you're no longer an arts professional. You are in the business of building connection and relationships. So let's just break this down for a minute. And these are ways that I'm thinking about it. And I will invite you all to add more ways to it. I didn't say this at the top. Interrupt me. If you've got questions, if you want to shout something out, please don't be shy. You don't have to put it in chat. You don't have to wait until the end. Just take yourself off mute and share what you want to share. We all appreciate hearing from more of you. So just know you can do that. Okay, who gets what? So when we talk about this, when we talk about a relationship, there's two sides to the relationship. There's me and there's you, right? There's your organization and there are the segments that you serve. So who gets what out of stewardship? I mean, let's just categorize some of these things, knowing that we all get connection. That is the primary goal in this. So that's just standard. Organizations get these things. You get information. When you steward, you are learning new things about the people that you serve or seek to serve, the people that support your organization, that come, that don't come, that live next door, whoever it is you're talking to, you get new information. Information is a really powerful and effective tool in helping you guide strategy, in helping you program, and knowing how to talk to your audiences and invite them in. You get feedback. What's working and what's not? What do they like about you? What don't they like about you? Good relationships include feedback. Sometimes you need someone to be able to look you in the eye and say, Laura, that did not sit well with me. We got to have a conversation about this. Or you want to be able to go to Greg and say, Greg, that was the best dinner party I'd ever been to. Thank you so much. Right? There's feedback that's natural in relationships. There's natural feedback that happens in stewardship. And then we also often see increased engagement. People come back more. They make additional gifts. They show up to free events. They open more of your emails if you have well stewarded them through the relationship, if you've brought that attention and intention to the work that you're doing. And then the last thing, I mean, let's not be gauche about it. This is real. It's investment. When you steward people well, they are more willing and likely to invest holistically in your organization because you've invested in the relationship. Because that's what organizations get. I think we all like those things. I think we often get a lot of these things, but we don't always do a lot with them. We talked a lot about listening last time, what we do with feedback and information. So part of it is also formalizing these moments of doing this work so that you can reflect and act. And then what do people get? People get stuff too. They have to get things, right? This is a mutual relationship. People get to have input. Think about the relationships in your life where you feel most valued. It's when your friends or family call you and say, I need your advice. Or I want to be able to tell you something. I see something happening. I want to give you some input on what I see, what I observe. They get an understanding of your organization. You've told them a bigger story. You've engaged them in conversation. So now they have a fundamental understanding about who you are and what you do as an organization in your place. They get opportunities. They get opportunities to engage, to come back, to learn more, to meet people. They have access. So much of stewardship to me is about giving people access in the times and ways that they need it to feel like they're connected to what you do. And finally, they get that attention and validation. Who doesn't want attention and validation in the relationships that you have? All of these things are positive. I can't actually find negative repercussions to stewardship. It just doesn't happen. It's all upside all the time. Even if you learn difficult things, it's all upside all the time. Okay, so this is why we do it. This is what we get. This is what it starts to look like. But let's hear from Sandra and David, who do this work now. And I think both have some philosophies about what it can look like. So David, maybe if you would go first, how do you describe good stewardship? So we just said, here's a definition of stewardship, but what does it look like when it's really good?
Unmute, David.
Oh, I can't see him. Thank you, Sandra.
Hi. Hi, everyone. If you saw me
Hi.
talking to and moving, good stewardship is the ongoing process of creating meaningful interactions throughout the duration of an individual's engagement with your organization. And for me, that means building trust, loyalty, and support by consistently meeting or exceeding expectations. And then I'm a little long-winded sometimes, but just to back that up, I sort of, for my own personal core beliefs in stewardship and backing that definition up, it's, being passionate, getting personal, and giving praise. Those three things, I think you can kind of tie everything back into in making that definition of good stewardship succeed for your organization.
That's great. Thank you, David. Sandra, what would you add or change or challenge? How do you talk about it?
Yeah, I think we all appreciate the fact that the arts patron, if you look at that giving wheel, it's a small part of the pie in terms of, the percentages of folk we have. And so for us, it's an investment in ourselves. It's it is an organizational attitude. And it's the focus on making that stakeholder, whoever they are, feel appreciated, nurtured, and validated for why they are investing in us. So everything we do is with that mindset that we want to confirm their decision to care about us and invest in us.
Yeah. Now, both of you were in philanthropic roles. What do you think about? I think, Sandra, we've talked about this a little bit. I mean, this notion that stewardship is a full organizational activity. Is that what's happening? Is that what you see? Is it?
Well, for us, absolutely. So
Yeah.
it is the folks in the carpool line letting me know that XYZ is coming through this afternoon, and me being there to wave at them or speak to them or even go into their child's show. And this can be a subscriber, it can be a donor. I think the mistake we've made in the past is maybe reserving stewardship for the high end folks.
Yes.
But stewardship is for everybody. And so having the key people in the organization there in the lobby, welcoming and smiling at people as they come in. DCT really does a lot of that. It's a note on the side of the tax letter. We don't just send plain tax letters, and we know there'll probably be some official looking at them, but Robin or I or others, if they know them, will put a note on. Sometimes we don't put small amounts, but we will put confetti in a letter, the big pieces of confetti in a letter so that people kind of get an aha when they open that. It might be an invitation to a rehearsal or taking you to a certain part of our building, and our box office staff has done that. If we've done a puppet show and people were fascinated with that, we might escort you and your child back there just spontaneously. Everybody does have permission to do that. And the other cool thing is, I agree with whoever in the chat said, there generally is some chief department or chief person in charge of the primary parts of stewardship. But what I love is that we'll get on email after one of these experiences and share it across and among each other.
Cool. Oh, that's so cool. I love so much of what you're saying there, Sandra. And it really resonates. And you gave us not only great tactics in that, but it also starts to break down what doesn't have to be complicated in it, that it's more about a culture of engagement in some ways than it is about expensive lunches, right? I'm sure you take people out to some expensive lunches too sometimes, but that's not what the process of stewardship is. David, was there something you wanted to add there too?
I just back to what Sandra said. The moment individual steps across the threshold of your building, your organization, the stewardship process immediately begins. And it's the job of everyone to somehow provide that 360 wonderful experience from the moment they check in at your, whether you're like ticket kiosk or your front desk. They need to be treated like they are the most special person. And, in that passion that you have, hopefully internally within your organization, will exude. Of course, I think it's important, again, back to talking about the whole entire organization, that there is sort of, whether it's a monthly or biannual core check amongst everyone, and like, where are we? What are we doing? What can we be doing better, and evaluating, but constantly just sort of making it better. But everyone provides some sort of wonderful experience or a smile. Like, I love that Sandra was just like, a smile. I had a woman from Houston recently call and say, I love coming to the National more than anything in the world beat the Houston museums. I was up there for the art fair, and people just smile that are on the staff. People seem happy there, and that exudes. And I love that y'all don't try to seem like you're just too cool for school. And I was like, wow, okay. I want to, share this with the team. And the moment she shared that with me, I, on the phone, I wrote that all down and I sent it to the whole staff, because everyone should hear praise and compliments. I feel like that goes a long way and keeps the whole entire team constantly thinking, okay, we're doing the right thing. And I think that sometimes we get caught up in, or going, well, am I showing too much emotion? Be yourself, be emotional, share your joy for being working there with the people. It's contagious. I just think that's so important, like to establish that immediately, and treating sort of anyone that comes into your organization, whether it's in person, via mail, like they're an old friend or a friend that you want to make for life.
I love that. You remind me of a story that a client just told me this week. They have a vaccine and a mask mandate in place in their theater, and it's about a 1,200 seat venue. So it's a lot of people to just get through these queues. And they worked really hard to try and establish a system that would make all of that make sense. And their artistic director got a letter from a patron that went to their theater for the first time during all of this and said, I have built my career in customer service. I run XYZ customer service organization, and I have never seen a mask check be so fun and enjoyable. Like this is, you knocked it out of the park. The thing that was supposed to be a hurdle became like being in somebody's living room. And it was just really extraordinary. That too is great stewardship. Thank you both for that. We'll ask you more questions in just a moment. But you both said this, and in fact, many of you answered the question this way, that stewardship is an organization-wide activity. This is a group effort. It is not a solo performance. Everyone has some kind of responsibility for stewarding the relationships in their sphere of interest and connectivity, right? But it isn't a one-size-fits-all project. This isn't everyone doing the exact same activity in unison. And in fact, I think it's better when it's not that it's better when it brings your authenticity and passion and vocabulary into the relationship. So all of you have really different skills that will make you successful stewards of the relationships that your organization relies on, but you're not all going to do it in the same way. I certainly I don't do it the same way Jenny does. And Jenny is an amazing steward of our clients and our patrons and the people that we work with, but we have a really different vocabulary for some of this. Doesn't mean either of us are doing it wrong, as long as we're both bringing to the table what's really effective in giving people what they need and getting us what we need and creating those mutually beneficial relationships. So as we start going through this today, I want you to begin thinking about where your sphere of influence is within your organization. Where can you own stewardship? A little piece of it, a giant piece of it. You decide what's right for you, your skill set, and again, the resources and influence that you have. I also want to talk about stewardship in maybe we're going to start getting into more tactical things, but there's still a little bit of theory here. And I want to introduce the notion of stewardship as being action-based. This is, it's a noun, technically, I think. But here, this is a noun. But stewardship in and of itself is not a singular something. It's not just an idea. It's a series of calculated and thoughtful actions that will lead ultimately to different results. So let's talk about some of the verbs of stewardship, the action that stewardship can take. Listening. We spent a whole session talking about listening. You know how important we think it is. We know how important you know it is to be listening to those that you serve so you can understand their experience, their expectations, and the possibilities of what you could do for your network. It's about inviting. Stewardship also doesn't just have to be about thanks. An invitation is a way of offering people access, and access is a really key way of bringing people more deeply into your fold and into the culture of your organization. Who has access to what? to when, to who, what are the assets that you have where providing access would deepen a relationship. Invite people to that. You can invite them to paid things. You can invite them to free things. But the invitation in and of itself says, I'm invested in you. Sometimes it's about changing. Really good stewardship means that you as an organization are ready to change and adapt based on the information and feedback you receive when you engage deeply in these relationships. What have you heard that you can address better in your processes, in your marketing materials, in your registration process? That too is good stewardship. We heard you. We heard you. It was really hard to buy a ticket on our website. Shouldn't have been that hard to buy a ticket on our website. We've made it easier. Here's how we can better address your needs. Oh, you heard me. You listened to me. You took my input. You responded. I now am invested differently in you because I feel heard, right? What do we change? It can be about asking. Stewardship is not just about asking for money, but it's sort of like this inviting. Ask for more engagement. Ask for more money sometimes. That's not wrong to ask people to invest more. If you've built the relationship that says they have the capacity, interest, and buy-in to do it. That too is part of stewardship. I know what you're passionate about, person. I have a way for you to expand that passion, for you to contribute that passion to shared goals and values. It's not sheepish, right? We don't need to be sheepish in stewardship. We can ask. You can also ask for their time, for thought partnership. I work with an organization in Toronto that does the most amazing work with their Net Promoter Score and system. So it's all de-anonymized. They get back to every single person who submits a survey after every single performance. And they say, we're so glad you loved it, or let me fix that for you. It sounds like you don't have the seat that you want. Here's how I can address it. But they get back to everybody. And they take it one step further by bringing all of those NPS scores into Tessitura, into their database. So now when somebody calls in to buy a ticket, they can see how they have ranked past shows, the feedback that they've received. So they've really created this robust mechanism. But here's what it's let us see. It lets us very quickly see who their super promoters are. And their super promoters are people who have all different kinds of capacity for giving. Some of them are people that buy the $15 tickets to every single concert that they do. Some of them are their biggest donors. But all of these people are now rising to the top here to say, we're hyper engaged. We love everything you do. So we've now built a program for these super promoters to give us feedback on key initiatives. How do we actually formalize their investment and love of what we do into a feedback mechanism that lets them participate? I like this. I'm excited about what asking can be. It's not just money. And then of course it's about thanking, but it's not always a generic thanks, right? Generic thanks are fine. But what we also want to see are specific thanks, closing loops on conversations that you've opened with a patron, acknowledging the impact of their past or their first engagement personally in all of the best ways. So I think I'm curious maybe here, I'm changing the question, David and Sandra, and that's not fair, but I'm going to do it anyway, because you sort of answered the one that I had ready for you. So instead, I'd like to ask you about the verbs of stewardship that don't have to be these. I suspect there are many that you could put on this list that I haven't. Where do you tend to, where do you gravitate to personally as stewardship professionals? And you can do multiple things here. But what are some verbs from this list or others that define your work? It's not fair. I should have warned you. I'm sorry.
Oh, I mean, I didn't know if Sandra wanted to jump in or.
You go, take it.
Okay, for me, it's about, I'm naturally a very curious person. And when you have the passion I do for the job that I do, I want to know why people are involved with your organization. So be curious. And then with that, listen. And so you're constantly like knowing whether this person's your $60 donor or your $60,000 donor, things about their lives. And I'm one of those people that will ask them, why are you here? Why did you get involved? Like, and people might go, wait, why are you here? I'm like, or I'll go up to the gallery exhibition or an opening and go, do you like this piece? Is this really what you like? And then they say no. And it's a conversation starter. It's a way that you can actually talk to people and find out what they're interested in it. And some people might just say, oh, I've always just been a member. And then I'm like, well, what made you get involved then? Like, tell me, and thank you so much. And you make these notes in your head. And then of course you want to keep a really hygienic, wonderful database. Or if you're like me, write it all down as soon as you're like, have a moment, whether you've been meeting with someone or, right, go around the corner at the gallery and be like, note, Mara Scheffler loves this and this, and her child is named Adam. And so the next time you talk to these people or you're like, how's Adam doing? I mean, taking those little personal bits that are not just about your institution is what I love, but I also love thanking people. And one of my favorite new things to do is to go and use your technology. Use your iPhone if you have it, or recording device or Android device, and record something that's going on at the museum, whether it's a tour by some educators, a piece being installed, behind the scenes at your rehearsals, and share that not just with your top donors. It's wonderful you can share that with the person that's the presenting sponsor, of course, but share that with a few others that will feel really like special about it. You can send it to them via email, or you have their cell phone number in your database. Send them, go, hey, it's David from the Nasher. This is so cool. I wanted to share it with you. Hope you love it as much as I do. And just sharing that sort of wonderful, I don't know, the thing that you're passionate about, but you hope that these other folks are passionate about as well. And I think that's contagious and it inspires people. And I think it's also, and I just want to add on, so important when you have new donors or you're meeting people for the first time, you really have like a certain window, or that when people have joined your organization, I'll back up. If they've just joined to become a member or they're a first time ticket buyer, to make sure that you, within the first 60 days, give them a proper thank you, acknowledge them, call them. That, in my professional opinion and experience, is what carries people on to being your rejoining members, your renewing members, and the ones that keep coming back, whether they're involved at a high level dollar amount or not. They're investing their time, and you see those people over and over again showing up your seminars and organizations. And I'll be quiet now, and Sandra, go from there.
That's great. And you said so many things that I would just reiterate, but the one that I've so latched onto, because it's not here, is that you're curious and you're constantly intaking, and you've got all this information. To make it actionable, you have to record it somewhere, right?
Oh, yeah.
You have to have these internal processes. If we're thinking about one-to-one stewardship, and I don't think it's the only way to do it, but when you're in like one-on-one conversations, you've got to be able to capture and formalize what you've just learned so that organizationally you can benefit from it, not just individually, right? There's something to that. How do we share the information to empower everybody to be a steward? Sandra, please.
I would even say, even beyond the one-to-one, if a patron has come in and said something, or you tend to hear multiple patrons kind of saying the same thing. I crave hearing that from box office, and knowing, what the feedback is when someone calls on the phone about a particular offering or a particular sentiment. In this COVID time, for us, it's been really rewarding. We've had to shift our opening show for January here. And we put that message out. And of course, some of the early shows are the ones that are usually pretty packed for DCT. And for people to encourage us and to tell us, I think you're doing the right thing, really appreciate you being so mindful in this space, means a lot. And, we share that across the organization. So everyone knows that in these curious times when we're not sure we're doing the right thing or not, that our patrons are reinforcing that they actually appreciate it. So for us being stewards of families, that means a whole lot. The other thing I would say, you ask about your word. I think for me, and I love that Jenny put in the chat the word sharing. I think that goes back to us all being willing to share information and share people. There is no one that owns any one person in an organization. And it brings me to the word authenticity, because for the organization, you can't just, I liked what you said about, okay, we need to think about what's in our purview that we can control. And if each department can do that and then be consistent with it, I think that's where it's powerful, because the same donor that's going to love us today may have a complaint that we have to deal with tomorrow. And if they don't get the same kind of treatment because it's a complaint,
Right.
we've missed an opportunity, because that's as much of an opportunity to cultivate someone as is, when they have great things to say about us. And I think
Yes.
we really missed that opportunity. And I think many of us have seen relationships turn when we weren't able to treat the complainer the same way we treated the happy-go-lucky thumbs up all the time kind
Oh,
of.
that's such a good
Sandra.
point. And yeah, go ahead, David.
No, I wanted to agree. I mean,
Yeah.
we can't please everyone, and there's always complainers. And if you haven't experienced someone that hasn't had a good experience with your organization, then just wait, it'll happen. But it's one of those things that taking responsibility and being accountable to people, whether they're new or old in your organization, is so important. And I think that's just, it's easy for us to ignore and say, well, that's just, we're not going to pay attention to that. It's almost even more important to go. And, I will say in my own personal past, the moment there have been some flub ups, myself and the director of an organization went to people's homes, knocked on the door, and personally apologized, and also brought them a gift and said, this is how we're going to make this right. Because that is something that's just as important as being, thankful, being wonderful, but taking accountability and being always listening. If we only listen to the good stuff, we're not going anywhere. I mean, failure is an opportunity for all of us to get better and to grow. I mean, period. And Sandra, also, I love what you said about everyone. Everyone owns everyone. It's not one of these things where it's like ego is involved and this is my donor and no one else touches it. That's not, it doesn't work in the end if you do that. It doesn't. You got to share, everyone's involved. You got to share not just across your development team, but your director, your, visitor services staffs, whomever else. So I agree with you 100%, Sandra. So great.
We've talked about de-siloing a little bit in these sessions. In fact, we had a whole session really about de-siloing between key patron-facing departments. Stewardship is an awesome place to start that de-siloing, because it is often, not exclusively, and Sandra, I'm really glad you brought this up, it is proactive and positive. It is an easy way to engage cross-departmentally or collaboratively. The stakes, as I've said before, are only good. There's no risk in stewardship, really, ever.
What's the worst that can happen is a person.
What's the worst that going to happen? You
Thanked a ton of times. Yeah.
I mean, that's not a thing, right? You can't, there's no way to go wrong in that. But I also think that that's why that the de-siloing becomes really important, because multiple different departments do have engagements with the same people. And some people are going to get good news and some people are going to get bad news. But I actually think sometimes the bad news is where we have the greatest opportunity to steward the relationship, because that's where we can take accountability, where we have ownership, where we bring like real honesty. There's no salesmanship in solving a problem, right? That just becomes a very human, personal thing. So I love the notion of problem solving as stewardship. So I would add that to the list, right? Problem solving is critical stewardship. Okay, let's keep going from here. I'm going to talk about a couple of myths, and we've been through some of these already. So first, the myth is that it's always bespoke. It is always one-on-one and expensive and time-consuming. It's not. All of the things, in fact, that you've heard us talk about today aren't time-consuming. Most of them aren't expensive at all. Some are one-to-one and some aren't. The notion of having front-of-house staff or museum guards and docents who are all trained and bought into the power of their smile to welcome someone into an organization affects people in a one-to-one way. But in fact, that's one-to-many. That's just culturally, here's how we welcome people into our lobby. We look somebody in the eye and acknowledge them the moment they walk in. I can't tell you how many museums I have been to in New York where I feel like I have burdened them by coming into their space and paid them $27 to visit their exhibit, because nobody has looked up to say, welcome, thank you. What brought you in here today? Do you want to join our e-list? They ask for nothing. They don't look up. They say it's $27. You know, we take Visa. Okay, we can do that, right? That's lousy stewardship. Stewardship can happen at point of sale as well. Okay, but emails, you can absolutely effectively steward people through email. And I would encourage you all, I think I've done this in all 4 sessions, to look at the tone in your emails, in your confirmation emails, in your pre-show emails. I got a pre-show email. Oh, I love them, from an organization that I am very closely connected to this week, that I think did everything possible to deter me from coming to this weekend's performance. It was like one threat and hurdle after another. It's all true stuff. It is true that their bar isn't going to be open. It's true that masks are required. It's true that they're doing vaccine checks, but they set so many hurdles for me that I feel like, is it worth it? You know, maybe I should just stay home and have a glass of wine and do something else. You've made this too hard. Check your tone in these inexpensive standard things that you're doing and build the stewardship in. Bring your mission into it. Bring your passion into it. Bring the role that your organization plays into your standard communications. Super cheap, not even hard. It's just about changing what might already be burned into a system. Robocalls. We love robocalls. People often love robocalls, not for sales, not for growth stuff, to remind them that they have performances, to call them and say, hey, just a reminder, single tickets are going on sale, and you're not going to want to miss it because you're a donor and you're going to want early access, and you've got it, however you decide to use them. And you'll know your audiences if it's right or not. Surveys, greetings, greeting cards, thank you messages are all really effective, inexpensive tools. So focus on these first. That stewardship is only about thanking, never asking. We've talked about that. Not true. Invitations give people access and opportunities to engage. Ask your people to do things. It is never bad to ask them to participate. And lastly, this notion that you have to be an outgoing people person to be a good steward, so not true. Anybody can effectively steward. You don't have to be type A, you don't have to be an extrovert. There is no Myers-Briggs personality that is a better steward than any other. Because what it is about honing your skills, using the skills that come so naturally to you, and combining that with the belief that you have in the impact of your organization. So if you've got belief in what you do, if you're passionate about the work and the relationships that your organization is able to create, then you can be an extraordinary steward. Also, stewardship really requires some behind the scenes people. So if you really don't ever want to have to look somebody in the eye, your data guru can help you be good stewards. Having a great database is a part of stewardship. Understanding segmentation and list pulling, attention to detail, spell check, proofreading, copywriting. All of this is a part of good stewardship. All of you can contribute to stewardship in active, productive ways. So we want to build this culture of stewardship. We've talked about this, that it's got to be everybody. And there's not an easy answer for how to do this. In the next 3 minutes, I am certainly not going to be able to give it to you because it doesn't exist. But I will give you 3 things that I think are important in building that culture of stewardship. A lot of this comes from the top. This comes from leadership. And so I acknowledge that if you're not in that role, you might feel like you can't do it, but you can, particularly in these top 2 things. Check your vocabulary. How do you talk about your people? Remember, we're humans, talking to other humans, creating deeply human experiences. Do you talk about people as numbers, as units, as seats? I hear that all the time. How many seats sold? How many people are coming? Let's change this vocabulary to be human patron centric. If you start to have that as a part of your vocabulary when you're talking about the work you're responsible for, then you can't help but start thinking about the relationships. So we've got to humanize our campaigns, humanize your data. You've got to talk about relationships, not just transactions. You know, we say butts in seats. It's a little closer to just saying how many tickets sold, how many seats sold. But let's say how many patrons are coming. Those switches just start to like fire a different synapse in your head. How many people are we serving? We're serving 1,300 people this weekend. That's how many people are coming through the museum. What's our plan for welcoming 1,300 people? It's different than thinking about admissions. Talk about it. Talk deliberately, intentionally about stewardship. Everybody, put this on your next team meeting. I don't care who your team is. This should be an agenda item regularly. How are we stewarding people? Where are we in our stewardship? What can we do differently? What are we learning from people? Go back to those verbs. Pick a verb every week. Make up your own verbs every week. Or to just start having regular conversations. You've got to normalize this and get that language out of development and into the whole organization. So each of you now are leaders for your organization that can bring that language and that intention back to your team conversations. And then we have to create accountability. I have seen this so many times during the pandemic, especially, but certainly before. We're really good as a sector at stewarding our highest level donors. We're good at that. We know how to do it. They've got all the access. We have their cell phone numbers. We have dinner with them. They text us individually to make sure we've given them their behind the scenes pass for the opening exhibition. We know how to do it. It's rote, it's standard, and we do it well. We do it very, very, very well. But you've got to now start creating accountability for everybody else. So if there isn't someone who's responsible for thinking about new to file patrons, people who are coming to your organization for the first time, for education households, for first-time donors, for guests of gala attendees, there's a lot of money that walks in with those guests that walk right back out the door. So think about that. Who can be held accountable and what can you, I like this part the best, what can you hold, where can you take the accountability and say, I'm going to care about this. And that's why we're planning a campaign together today. So you can do just that. Okay, I've talked a lot. It's probably enough for a moment. So we're going to do this instead. We're going to put you in some breakout groups so that you have a moment to reflect on and talk about the culture of stewardship in your organization. Is it perfect? I hope so. I hope you all tell me it's perfect. And then you can just come back and we can be done, I suppose, if it's all perfect. But if it's perfect, how'd you get there? What was the process? Like, what makes it easy? So talk about why stewardship in your organization is great. And if it's not perfect, what's in the way of getting there? Resources, silos, understaffed, lack of communication, not a lot of clarity about what your priorities are. None of this is about throwing your colleagues, your leadership, yourselves under the bus. This is just about taking a moment to step back and say, okay, we've been talking about this now for 45 minutes. What are we doing well? And what are we not? What is our culture of stewardship? So Maura is going to put you all in some breakout rooms. Unmute. It was really nice to have, I'm still muted. Can you hear me? It's telling me I'm muted, which feels like a real, it's really throwing me off course.
You're good, Caitlin.
Good. Thanks, everybody. I hope you all enjoyed your conversations. Would anyone like to share something they heard there that was validating or surprising, something that one of your colleagues said?
I'm going to say I was really impressed with the conversation around apologizing, the conversation around how to do that and how that can bring people closer. That was a really neat thing to hear, and how different people, and even in some of the comments, how we say, oh gosh, we messed up, you know, and then how we go about fixing it, and also about being proactive, talking about what's the worst thing that can happen, and then how are we going to address it so that we already know what we're going to do before we get there.
That's great. Thanks for sharing. Anybody else? Yeah, please, Jenny.
I loved my breakout with Mara Scheffler. And what I learned from my brief time on board with you all was about the non-butts in seats terminology. If we can personalize it and put our passion about why we sing or why we're musicians or why we love the arts and get that message across. Oh my goodness gracious, right? And we have a great program coming up with the Plano Civic Chorus, and I am just impassioned about getting that message out. And how am I using my terminology as membership chair to express that to the rest of the membership, to get them going out and inviting, you know, their world of people, their network. And I love that, because I know for a fact that I have literally used the term butts and seats before, and I will not use that again.
Well, it's better than units. I mean, at least a
Better
butt
than
is
units,
connected to
yes.
a human, but you know, we can push that further into places that really are like really respectfully human, you know, but
Right.
it's such a shortcut that we have.
Yeah.
And sometimes in those shortcuts, we start burying ways of thinking, or it just starts to inform ways of thinking. So yeah, I appreciate you saying that. Does anybody else have a share? You don't have to, but if you do, we welcome it. All right. Then we're going to share some examples with you. So let me share my screen here. Hang on just a second. We talked a little bit about theory. You all had some good conversations about what your culture of philanthropy looks like. We've been throwing stuff at you from 12 different angles. And so we're going to get super tactical for a minute and talk about the practice of it. What can some of this actually look like? These are just straight up examples. Now, all of you are doing some kind of stewardship. We would say that in every single engagement you have, in every campaign you launch, there should be an element of stewardship in it. And now it can just be about the language. Sometimes stewardship is just the tone, stop warning me and welcome me, right? Like, let's just flip some of that information and think about how that lands. Now, so often, as we find ourselves in this business of human connection, we say things like, but we don't sell widgets. We sell experience, we sell humanity, we sell culture. Like, this is big and better than pen caps or whatever widgets are out there today. And yet, I bet every single person on this call has had some awesome stewardship from widget companies. And so I think this is a moment for us in the human business to steal from the widget business or the retail business and bring that back into what is so totally natural and right for the product that we have, that is connection. So today we're going to peek over the fence a little bit, not many, but we're going to peek over the fence at some other examples of what stewardship looks like outside of the walls of our sector. And then I just have a couple of examples that are recent here that I'll bring in at the end that are from our sector. So I'm running through these quickly. We're not going to read all of this in this moment. I'm just going to point out great stuff that happens in them. This one's mine. I subscribe to a tortilla company because I live in Pittsburgh where there are not good tortillas. And so you have to get them elsewhere. I love that they anticipate when I'm going to need it. They know about how many tortillas people seem to go through in some period of time, and they were right on. Are you running low on burritos? Do you need a refill? Come, let us take you back to grandma's kitchen and bring some more. Listen to that language. They're not telling me all of their ingredients. This is super simple and says, we know what you need. Let us give you these homemade tortillas that come from our grandmother's recipe, right? And this feels super personal. Okay, yes, great, I'll do it. So of course I immediately do it. And then the next day, I immediately get an order confirmation. Burritos are on the way, hope you enjoy it. And then I get this one that says, we're processing your request. But this one isn't designed. This looks like it's actually just sent to me. Now, we all know it's not, but it looks like it was. And the thing that I love about it is this bit at the bottom. This says, by the way, I noticed you're already on your second purchase with us. How many of you acknowledge second purchases? So many of us don't even acknowledge the first purchase. But we know we've got all this crazy attrition that happens in arts and culture. Being able to say, you did it again, that's cool. Thank you so much for doing this thing again. You're awesome. I love it. This is so simple, one-to-many automated work that is doing a better job of stewardship than half of the arts organizations that I have purchased tickets to. Okay, this one, Greg shared this example from Native. It's a deodorant company, and they really push the limits of what a thank you note can be. This is actually only about a quarter of it, but I wanted you to be able to read it, so I've edited it down. But they make such a big deal out of you making another order. Here's the story of everybody in our office. We're going to introduce you to Kelsey, and I think there's someone named Jim in it, and Natalie, and they're all celebrating you, Greg, and they have his name in here about 4 times. It's preposterous and it's silly, but it is totally in the vocabulary of this company. And I think that's important too. What's the vocabulary of your company? What do you sell? Who do you talk to? The vocabulary for your major donors might be really different than the first time family that comes to a performance. So how do we change our tone to talk to the people in ways that will make the most sense to them? Native does it really well. Jenny, this one comes from you. This is from the Misfit. Wait, which one is you? The Misfit Veggies?
Imperfect foods. Yeah.
Imperfect foods, right? How ugly citrus makes an impact. But this is stewardship where it's not a part of a buy this, you did buy this. This has nothing to do with transaction. It's a reminder of the shared values that we have. It supports small businesses. It creates sustainability. Here are some menus that will, or here are some recipes that you might consider using these things on, right? This is just information sharing. This is values building and value sharing. Okay, there's 3. I'm gonna give you 2 arts and culture ones. I love this one because it makes me laugh every time. This is a postcard that was customized on the printed side. Caitlin, we've missed you. This is a TYA theater, totally appropriate for them to have a crying toddler on it, not appropriate for all of your organizations, super appropriate for theirs. But it says, come back. We've got a really special deal for you because we miss you, Caitlin. And then on the back, it says, hi, Caitlin, not to be overly dramatic, but it's been a while since we've seen you. This is how my friends talk to me. This is how we talk to each other. This isn't how businesses talk to customers. This is how people talk to people. I love this example. This was a card that I just got on my seat. It was, in fact, this organization's first performance, indoor performance in over 2 years. And they printed these beautiful note cards and put them on every single chair. And all it says is, welcome back. You being here is all we needed for the holiday season. We're thrilled to be back in live. They didn't have to say, because you're a donor, as a first-time buyer. This was just a nice card for everyone. And the card's quite lovely. It's not marketing anything. It's just saying we're back together. And I think this was really well done. So those are some examples. And now that you're thinking about it in that way, go back through your inbox of confirmation emails and organizations or products that you have been a patron of in the past and see who does it really well. Or, you know, some of it you might find off-putting. I've got those examples too, but I didn't want to put them up here because that feels cool. So find great examples and copy from it. Steal all of the great stuff that's out there. You don't have to reinvent the wheel on it. Just customize that wheel for you. All right, Jenny, we're going to ask people to get to work here. We only have 10 minutes left. And in these 10 minutes, you're going to be able to get this done. So Jenny, take it away.
Okay, so as all of that wonderful information that Caitlin has provided and that we've talked about over the past hour and 20 minutes, we're going to put into practice in a little bit. So the first thing that we want you guys to do is think about, pick a segment here of your patrons, your people. And segments can look like anything, right? We're very, very used to seeing that standard loyalty ladder, right? Where you think about segments in relationship to your transactions with your organization, right? But it can go way beyond that. It can be, yeah, buddy, bud, sorry, I have my toddler. Okay. He likes green apples. So there you go.
Good.
It can obviously be your current subscribers, your first-time single ticket buyers, first-time donors, those segments that we talk about all the time. But it could be something else, right? It could be split up by demographics, right? We just had all of our year-end giving campaigns. Think about how your Gen Zers have donated differently than your Gen Xers do, right? Because they do donate very differently. So maybe your follow-up communications to your year-end giving should be generationally split, maybe. Or think about your education programs, who's taking the classes. So pick one segment right now in this moment that you feel you could focus on to just think about what a stewardship campaign could look like for that segment. Don't let this chart limit you, right? Think about what works for your organization in this moment right now. Here, this is, Caitlin just showed me this the other day, and I love this chart. So you're thinking about who you're speaking to, and then think about how you're going to get them where you want to go, right? So this is like thinking about your goal, the end result, and how you're going to get from A to B. I love that example. I don't think I'd ever quite heard that in a way, in this way before Caitlin showed this to me the other day. Because then you know where you're headed, right? You're not just stewarding every segment the same way. So this is, Caitlin's going to show you this chart. This is different examples on how to get different segment types to different goals, right? So this is an amazing, again, pulling in all those verbs that we talked about before, and you can listen and invite and listen again and adapt and engage, right, in different ways. So think about how those verbs are going to pull into the relationship building that you are going to think about doing right now, and it's with the segment that you're thinking of. So let's do it. Grab a pen or a blank document or something, and we are going to, are we going back into breakout groups, Caitlin, or are we just going to stay all together? Great. So we're gonna do this. So pick a segment, right, that you have, where you have your influence. So Caitlin talked about that zone of influence, right? If you're the volunteer coordinator, think about your volunteers. If you are a content manager and you just write your e-blasts, think about where you have influence in your organization. Pick your 3 verbs that you think would work for that segment. Define what you want to do, and then put a timeline on it. So we want to make sure that these things actually happen, right? And a big piece of that is putting a times and dates to all of these tactics that we're gonna do in here. Caitlin, did I explain that correctly? So we're gonna pick a segment, you're gonna pick your 3 verbs, you're gonna define what you're gonna do, and figure out when you're gonna do it.
So here's an example. You don't have to use this one. Brand new single ticket buyers. That's transactional. Maybe it's not the most interesting segment, but we all have them, right? Brand new buyers. We're going to give them a welcome, not just a confirmation, a welcome. That's going to happen 2 days after they buy. This is automated. Introduced in our organization. What are we doing in this communication? We have some purpose there. And we're going to thank them the day of their engagement. You just saw your first show. Thank you so much for coming. You were part of the best-selling show in history. We're validating their choice to come to this something. You did good. You picked a good one. Thank you for being here. And then within a week, we're going to invite them back. Hey, come back. Here are some options just for you. As a first-time buyer, we think you might like this next. Try out a class, come to a free lecture, and of course, our next concert is on XYZ.
I have just a personal example that I think is really great here. My husband and I recently renewed our subscription to the Arboretum that's down the street from us. And when we did that, we got a lollipop with our renewal. And the lollipop's stick was made out of seed paper. So there was a little note card in it that said what to do with your seeds, right? And then just this week, which was like a month later, I got an email saying, how are your seeds doing? They should have sprouted by now. Are they not? Maybe they need more sun. There was a whole thing about how to nurture the seeds for my lollipop that I had gotten on my renewal. And I loved that because they're the Arboretum, right? Nurturing plants is what they do. So they gave me to take home a little piece of their mission to do in my kitchen. And I thought that was amazing. So it's just a little example.
I love that, Jenny. It's great. Okay, so you've got your homework. Pick a segment. Pick 3 actions that you can take. Assign the tactics and the dates to those actions. This doesn't have to be hard. In fact, I think the faster you can do it in this moment, the better. Because the next step is sharing it with your colleagues. Who else would help you implement this? Who else talks to these people? Bring this back to a team and say, hey, I got an idea. Here's the thing I want to try, make it better. Poke holes. What did I forget? What can we do even better? What are we already doing? Who else should we steward in this way? So do some quick homework, 5 minutes tops, right? You have so many ideas. You do so much of this. Just be really intentional about it, 5 minutes. And then put this on the next agenda of the next meeting you go to where it's appropriate. Your team meeting, your full staff meeting, your board committee meeting, whoever are the right people to help bring it into action and get this thing going and off the back burner, bring it to them for conversation. Folks, thank you so much for joining us today, for participating in chat, for talking to each other, for giving us your time to think and talk about this work. It has really been a pleasure, and I hope you all take me up on the offer for more conversation about this or any of the things we've discussed in these workshops with Taka so far. I'll put my email again in chat. Use it liberally. And thank you all. Be well. Maura, I hand it back to you.
Thank you, Caitlin and Jenny, so much. We have so enjoyed this 4-part series and the conversations we were all able to have, the people we were able to meet. Thank you to Sandra and David for being our local gurus today. I always love hearing what both of them have to say. I have such deep respect and admiration for both of them. So thank you for sharing today. Make sure you give us your feedback. Fill out our feedback survey, both for this session and all the other sessions we hope to do this year. Give us your thoughts. Take Caitlin up on her offer. She's great. She's somebody you want to know. And take those 30 minutes to think through your plans some more on stewardship. And I hope everyone has such a fantastic 2022. Let's hope and let's make sure it's better than 2021. And have a great rest of your day, everyone. Thank you.